Mavis and the Tomorrow People is an abridged reading from the OneSwitch 100 book. This is hosted at the Accessible Gaming Museum, oneswitch.org.uk/page/museum. Mavis deserves to be remembered. A groundbreaking project shaped by some of the UK's brightest minds and institutions. The first flexible, multi-purpose computer for the severely disabled. The 1970s was a period of economic decline in the UK. Many were fearful of the growing impact of computers upon their lives. Some were optimistic. Hopes of radical change, a leisure society, and an end to war were expressed. It was a time of fledgling human-computer interaction studies. How could ordinary people better harness the exciting possibilities of computers? Interest grew in exploring the benefits of computers to the disabled. In a joint project between the National Physical Laboratory, NPL, and Loughborough University, the Mavis team was formed. The goal? To bring the power of the microcomputer to any disabled person, to amplify the power of their minds and bodies. Impetus came from the great need of severely disabled children to learn, play, create, and have better control of their environment. The hope was to take the baton from Possum and to run with it. Computer-aided environmental control, telephone communication, online news, word processing, art, music, games and stories. Flexible input and output to match the user's abilities. All from one affordable, portable box. That was the dream. The Mavis team. The National Physical Laboratory was a hotbed of pioneering work with past luminaries including Alan Turing. One member of the Mavis team was Julia Schofield. Julie was the first totally blind graduate in computer science, awarded in 1975 at Hatfield Polytechnic. Julie had years of experience using cutting-edge blind accessible technology. Brought in as a consultant was Reg Melling, the co-creator of Possum. His trailblazing work galvanised the modern-day electronic assistive technology movement. Mavis would not have existed without him. Leading the project was experimental psychologist and maverick scientist Christopher Evans. Where most of the scientists at the NPL wore stiff suits or white lab coats, Dr. Evans ran around in American sneakers, jeans and open shirt. His office was said to feature a dentist chair from which visitors might spy a tame rat peeping out from his shelves. Chris was the best friend of science fiction writer J.G. Ballard. Together they worked on a number of new wave projects together. Some of this led into Ballard's most notorious book, Crash, a dark tale of car crash sexual fetishism. Less controversial work was published in 1969. One entitled How Dr. Christopher Evans Landed on the Moon was perhaps the first published playthrough of a computer game. Another, The Dreams of the Computer, where Chris had forced a computer to slowly lose its mind. By 1969, Dr. Evans headed the man-machine interaction section at the NPL. Experimental setups were tested with people unused to computers, which was just about everyone back then. One early project was of a medical history note-taking machine that simulated the manner of a very polite and patient doctor. A teletype machine was initially used with a keyboard mask, reducing the keys down to just yes, no and question mark. Tests in Glasgow found that alcoholics seemed more honest about how much they drank when asked by a machine. Some ethnic minority women found discussing gynecological issues with a male doctor impossible, but to a computer posing as a woman, far easier. The system evolved into a compact unit named Mickey, the medical interviewing computer. During the 1970s, Chris published books and gave talks on the mind, of cults and of computers. He was credited as a scientific advisor on ITV's The Tomorrow People, a sci-fi series for children. Chris was the guiding spirit over the Mavis team. Tragically, he died of cancer in 1979, just as the Mavis trials were to begin, and just as his television series, The Mighty Micro, was about to be broadcast, proclaiming an exciting future to come. Research. Experimental research covered many promising avenues for disabled people. Speech synthesis and Morse code, high visibility text, bliss symbols, teletext and view data services, robotics and user programming, and all manner of input devices. By September 1977, a Mavis prototype was ready to be demonstrated to a select audience. If enough support could be garnered, the project would continue. Mavis Mark I. The 1977 Mavis Mark I pictured shows Julia Howlett operating a talking arithmetic program by touch and hearing alone. In this early form, the system could demonstrate large, blocky colour graphics and text in different sizes. It could speak numbers and play varied musical tones. It could be controlled by a keyboard or sit puff. Software also included a text editor and a music playing activity where work could be saved to cassette. Nothing this versatile had existed before in the world of assistive technology. The demonstrations were a success. Work resumed immediately, with Ferranti brought in to collaborate on building Mavis Mark II and investigate market possibilities. Of interest, Ferranti had created the world's first commercial computer, the Ferranti Mark I, in 1951. This machine ran the world's first conventional computer video game, Christopher Strachey's Drafts, a game with a video display, music, and even an undo assist mode. Powering on. As soon as Mavis was switched on, it was ready to be used. A key feature was the matrix, using a possum-like scan and select method. Here, one or two inputs was enough to reach all the keys and main functions of the system. The big difference was that an unlimited number of custom matrices for different purposes could be created. At this stage, a brand new world of possibilities was opened. Trials. To a radio backdrop, I like to imagine cars, dreaming, a message in a bottle, the trials began. Firstly was Banstead Place in Surrey, a residential assessment centre for up to 32 young people of school leaving age. This included teenagers with spina bifida, cerebral palsy, heart disease, epilepsy, deaf children, blind children, and children with various brain injuries and learning disabilities. The aim was to support them all in getting ready for a more independent life. Secondly was the Richard Cloudsley School in London, which supported 100 disabled children aged 3 to 16 years. Of those, one 5-year-old, Joanne Dawson, was singled out as a perfect candidate for the project. She was an intelligent child with cerebral palsy, very frustrated by her inability to communicate and participate independently. Joanne was a bliss symbol user and was using a possum device in class. Joanne would start by taking Mavis home with her to replicate her possum work. Games. Most students at Banstead watched television as their main recreation. Games on Mavis provided a second possibility which could be used independently. Many students who could not manage other elements of the system still found a way to play the games for fun. 3 games were initially provided: Hangman, played here with foot switches, Target, an arcade-type game, and Patience, a number-matching game. The games proved so successful that a 4th was soon added, based on MB Electronics' Simon. At home in London, Joanne played the games too against her brother. Text editor. The text editor was a revelation for those able to use it. It gave an instant area to communicate from. It allowed users to edit their thoughts, display them on screen, print them, and save to cassette. Custom matrices allowed users to select whole words without having to type them in one letter at a time. Banstead users and staff made all sorts of content. An early Mavis user guide was available, as were pages copied from weekly magazines. The text editor also held potential for programming with Plum, the programming language for users of Mavis. User Response System. A branching text system enabled Mavis operators to create and complete quizzes, questionnaires and tests. Banstead used this to test children on the likes of horse riding, swimming, road safety, personal care and benefits. Content rapidly built up. All had the benefit that users could pause and complete them at their leisure. The computer never lost its patience. Art. Being able to create something uniquely your own can bring pride, joy and self-esteem. Mavis was instantly ready for users to doodle with. A cursor could be moved in 8 directions, with draw, erase, colour and fill options. Easier art matrices allowed a picture to be formed by selecting words such as grass, walls, door, roof, window, chimney to build a house. Finished art could be saved to tape or printed in black and white. It was said that many non-disabled adults found the system difficult, but that the children had no such problem. The boat example reflects a big news story of 1979. NASA's Skylab space station falling out of control back to Earth had caused global panic. Pictured here is Rachel, who was very weak and unable to speak, creating art using a single finger. She moved on to switch accessible input after her strength reduced further. Rachel very quickly became a competent user of Mavis, using it for communication and all classwork, including preparing material for other users. Music. Inherited from Mavis Mark I was the facility to play and edit tunes. The root of this came from early experiments with blind access and a box called Sparky. Alongside Morse code and speech, Sparky could translate text into a musical score. To mentally convert the music back into English was not at all easy. However, using the system as a musical sequencer made perfect sense. The advanced method displayed notes on a stave as they were played. Here, different musical keys and time signatures were possible to select. The simpler version allowed users to enter musical notes and lengths as letters. One of the tunes included was Bach's 1723 Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, likely inspired by the switched-on Bach Moog album from 1968. Another was Hornpipe, the theme to BBC TV's Blue Peter. Environmental control. A wide range of external devices could be controlled via Mavis. A system provided by Reg Malling facilitated the ability to control lights, heaters, door locks, intercoms, radio, TV, a train set, and so on. Additionally, the potential for telephone dialling from a contacts list was included. Pictured is Joanne making 2 boys jealous with the train set she got to keep. Evaluation. By the end of the trials, much was learnt. Mavis had proved it could be used for many tasks by a wide range of children of varying abilities. It proved that a black box all-in-one solution greatly reduced the clutter created by needing dozens of incompatible single-purpose aids. A wide range of children were able to work, play, create and express themselves. In some cases, personalities shone through that would have otherwise remained ever hidden. The London trials brought lasting benefits for young Joanne. Controlled movement was incredibly difficult, but a custom device was made. Using her right hand in a sideways motion, she would operate one of 2 wiper switches to navigate the Mavis matrices. The switches were personalised with coloured padding and a Peter Rabbit design. By the end of the trials, Joanne was using the system regularly at home and school. She was the last user of Mavis. In 2015, Joanne's mother Sylvia recalled, "Jo was a very independent young lady who travelled to many places with friends and family. She had a group of carers and was able to live an independent life whilst at the same time remaining at home with her family." Jo's father John was always very proud of what she achieved. He would help her to set up her systems to be able to email and text friends. She had a lovely smile, great sense of humour, and she affected everyone that came in contact with her. She was a lovely baby and a beautiful young lady, but unbiased. End of Mavis. Although the Mavis Mark II trials were successful in many ways, with the need for such a machine proven, there would be no Mavis Mark III. Government officials were told in debates that Mavis was already out of date and too expensive. A better approach might be to look at cheaper, less specialist home computers. Going to the highest levels of power of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, It was decided that the government's preferred approach was to aid the development of special interface switches for off-the-shelf personal computers, which did happen. Julia Schofield's 1981 book, Microcomputer-Based Aids for the Disabled, concluded, "With technology that is changing very fast, it is difficult to predict the future, except to say that it is probably brighter than it has ever been, provided that the correct beginnings are made now." This really means a vast and factual information and education programme being carried out to ensure that decision makers are in full possession of the facts, and that disabled people and their parents know and are realistic about the techniques and skills that are needed. In fact, that people generally become less in awe of computers. We are going to see a time in the not too distant future where leisure plays a far greater part in life than it has ever done, with people working far fewer hours, possibly from home. For the disabled person, working from home would be a great advantage, but it is now that leisure and the improvement of life need to be looked at carefully. It is no good having disabled people working if they are then totally cut off from the world outside and have nothing else to do.